come to order. Adequate notice of this meeting as required by the Open Public Meeting Act has been provided, that a copy of the notice specifying the date, time, and location was, number one, posted on the bulletin board outside of Borough Hall, 2, mailed, faxed, or emailed to the Courier News, and 3, given to the clerk administrator. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Next item is pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is roll call.
Art Adair, absent. Dan Rajevitz.
Here.
Roberta Carpenter. Here. Brian Dembski.
Here.
Rich O'Neill.
Here.
Ed Allen.
Here.
John Flores.
Here.
And Morgan McLaughlin will not be present this evening. And Eric Alvarez may be present, but not quite sure at this point.
All right, I do not have a itemized list of the proceeding.
The agenda?
Give me one agenda. That's the word I was looking for.
Okay.
Okay. Next item is approval of the minutes of April 20th, 2022.
I'll second.
Dan Rajevitz.
Yes.
Roberta Carpenter.
Yes.
Brian Dembski.
Yes.
Rich O'Neill.
Yes.
Ed Allen.
Yes.
John Flores.
Yes.
Next, we need to vote on a resolution for RWJ University Hospital, Somerset, number 2021-007Z.
I'll move it. I'll second that.
Any questions? That's great. Okay.
Dan Rajevitz.
Yes.
Roberta Carpenter.
Yes.
Brian Dembski.
Yes.
Rich O'Neill.
Yes.
Ed Allen.
Yes.
John Flores.
Yes.
All right, next item is we need to determine whether one of the board members is rightfully going to sit for this application, and that is Richard O'Neill and Cliff, the attorney. Let's talk about that.
I had received an inquiry from Rich as to this yesterday, and my opinion was, I tend to be very careful with these issues because the issue of conflict is not just about conflict, it's about what's called the appearance of impropriety. And what that means is that if the average citizen attending the meeting could as opposed to would, could infer that there might be an inappropriate, past or present relationship by one of the board members. If there's a question, that's usually good enough to disqualify the board member from participation. So I advised Mr. O'Neill last night that I felt that he should recuse himself, and I continue in that opinion. So I guess that means we have five board members.
Just to put myself on the record, I made that inquiry because I felt it was a potential conflict of
You
interest.
did the right thing.
And I just didn't want anything to come back on this board at a later date.
You're a model. I wish more members did what you did. The hardest thing is when everything's been done and then somebody says, did I have a conflict? So, no, you're doing exactly the right thing, and it's not prejudicial to anybody, including the applicant, because the applicant doesn't want a board member who could potentially be disqualified. And the board obviously doesn't want a board member in particular application to be disqualified because all the good work that they've done goes down the drain.
Rich, calm.
Yeah. I kind of anticipated this.
All right.
And I appreciate the guidance.
Oh, appreciate you asking. As I said, that was exactly the right thing to do.
All right, Counselor, we have 5. I would suggest that if we have Eric's phone number, maybe we could give him a call.
This is all
so we have 5, at least at this particular time, at 7:05, we have 5.
All right, Mr. Vice Chairman, my name is Francis P. Linus. My offices are in Somerset, New Jersey at 21 Pride Road. I'm pleased to represent the applicant and the owner of the property, Wolf Properties LLC. I see that we have 5 members. I know there was a discussion on the record regarding potential conflict of one of the board members. May I ask the board attorney as to what the nature of the conflict was?
Well, it was a previous relationship with the fire museum. And, I don't need to really, I thought that under the appearance of impropriety standard, it could be inferred that there was an inappropriate relationship. Which, the law is very clear on that.
Well, basically, I'm a little bit closer to it. Rich O'Neill has been with the fire department here at Somerville since birth, yes. And there is, diagonally across from this property in question is a fire museum, and Rich has had a lot to do with that. He does not own it, he has no financial interest in it, but he's the one who gives the tours and so forth. So he has been heavily involved in the fire museum.
So he's the caretaker.
Okay, there you go. He's a caretaker.
Right.
So thus he asked Cliff, and then the ruling is what the ruling is.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Vice Chairman?
Well,
Aye.
He's Mr. Chairman.
Aye, it's Mr. Chairman.
today I'm
Mr.
not happy.
Mr. Chairman, I have a second inquiry. I've been around a long time in the land use field. 5 members of the Board of Adjustment, we need 5 votes. We have a use variance, so we need 5 out of 5. My question to the chair is that we have a shorthand reporter here. Is it possible that if we proceed tonight with 5, that we defer the vote on the application until a missing board member or members, hopefully 7, would have the opportunity to listen to read the transcript or watch the video? That's all. My question.
It's unorthodox to do this. I know you want to get this before the board. You and I have discussed this several times in the past couple of days, Mr. Linus, but I mean, quite candidly, if you want to go with 5, that's really your call. It's a short board.
Oh, I'm aware it's my call on 5.
Yes, you are, sir, and
But I've also been involved in Board of Adjustment proceedings in other municipalities whereby you proceed through the hearing, 5 members who are here listen to the application, and the vote is deferred until some other board member or members has the opportunity to either review the transcript.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I promise you I have sufficient experience to be able to advise the board in this regard. Again, it's your choice. If you would like to do it, you could conceivably do that. The board could defer the vote to the next regularly scheduled meeting, or when it could be held, when the vote could be held.
Cliff, let me just interject here. We have, how many people are absent?
I'm sorry?
How many people are absent?
2.
Art for sure.
Morgan and Eric.
Okay, does Morgan have a conflict of
I
interest?
don't know.
Okay, we don't know about Morgan. We know that Arthur, the chairman, if we went in the direction that Counselor is suggesting, he no doubt could hear the recording of that. That would give you 6. The young man who's stuck on 287 no doubt could hear it. That would give you 7. And we don't know about Morgan. Rich is out,
Right.
and that's pretty much it. So the most you're gonna get is 8. If the 8th is, we don't know what is, why he's recusing himself. Why he's not.
Mr. Chairman, we're comfortable with 7, because 7 would be the voting membership.
Right.
Yes,
We are comfortable with 7.
yes, okay. So what do you think, Cliff? Can we hear it and defer?
I think you can hear and defer. Are you prepared to finish your application tonight?
In light of what I've heard from the staff regarding the backup and the fact that everything is booked until October, that's part of what we're driving tonight, to hopefully conclude tonight and proceed there apace. So yes, it's my intention to conclude the hearing tonight.
All right, well, I would suggest to the board that it could entertain the application. The applicant is entitled to go forward with a 5-member board. It's not a perfect solution. If we have a board member who comes in during the meeting, I would expect before a vote was rendered that board member had reviewed that section of the transcript that for the portion of the meeting he didn't appear, he didn't attend. And if another, for example, the regular chairman, he could certainly review the transcript and then vote. So I believe you can present your application, counsel.
All right, so there'll be no vote tonight.
Correct. If 5, yes, that is correct.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Will be advantageous for us to hold off for 15 minutes to save our garage so we can hear the testimony from the beginning?
I had heard there was trouble on 287. I've been stuck there a number of times
It's
myself.
broken down with for AAA, so.
Well, considering the fact that we are going to defer the vote, and we are going to allow the 2 missing members, at least 2 missing members, to hear the transcript, I would say it's not really.
Chairman, my name is Francis Pimenez, my office is.
Would you like chairs? You could just
I'll
hold them up.
repeat the chair of the business.
Okay.
My name is Francis Pimenez. I'm pleased to represent Wolf Properties LLC. They're the owner and applicant of the subject property. It's great to be here live and see people face to face. I represent 3 boards and we're still stuck in virtual land. So it is nice to see another face as we had in the past before this COVID crisis hit. Hopefully everybody's healthy and happy and moving forward. Having said that, this is an application for basically preliminary and final site plan approval. You have jurisdiction based on the fact that we're looking for a use variance for non-permitted use. So the application as presented is to convert a 2-family dwelling, an existing 2-family dwelling that was built in 1900, according to the tax records, into a mixed-use building containing offices on the ground floor. In other words, converting the duplex, the existing duplex, residential duplex, to offices on the ground floor for Wolf Properties, the owner applicant. The owner applicant is in real estate and development, and he needs offices. That's what we would like to do. And we'd like to shift the 2 residential units, the 2 duplex units, up to the 2nd floor, so that we have 2 2-bedroom apartments. Nothing changing in terms of the residential capacity, moving 2 residents from the duplex and putting them upstairs. So that's the nature of that portion of the application. The addition is proposed.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you think you could, in your introduction, maybe clarify? As you know, we had a little confusion the last couple of days. Just make sure the board knows what's before them and what is not.
Right, I'm going to complete the garage issue that we spoke about.
Very good.
And I will cover that clearly.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, sticking with the moving the residents upstairs, 2 residents in the duplex, which is now basically vacant, upstairs to have 2 residents, no increase in the residential portion of the application. The addition upstairs will contain a dining room and a living room for each apartment. The apartments are 2 bedrooms and are 883 square feet and 876 square feet. We also are proposing, there's an existing garage, an existing 6-bay garage, which is an accessory structure to the current residential use. The application is to create a 2nd floor, add a 2nd floor to the garage, and that the purpose of that would be to allow the office user, my client at this point, the owner and applicant, to use that area for storage. And that's the proposal. We had an issue on the garage. We initially thought, after we received Mr. Cole's report, I initially thought, and people initially thought that it was a principal structure requiring another D variance. And we didn't notice for another D variance, so we had discussions with the attorney, the board attorney. We also took another look at the ordinance, and 2 things happened. The two things that happened was it is absolutely an accessory structure, and that does not require any D variance no matter how high it is. I'm not saying that's going to be a huge situation. The proposal is for a total of 16 feet in height. The second thing we learned, our architect and our planner looked at the ordinance. I took a look at it, and lo and behold, the ordinance measures height, we say. The ordinance measures height to the mid-level of the roof, and that is 16 feet, and that's what we're proposing. So we don't believe there's any variance with respect to that. Now, I don't want the board to get excited or any members of the public. There are a number of variances that were pointed out by Mr. Cole, and there are a number of design exceptions and waivers. You'll hear testimony tonight that basically, other than the D variance for the use variance and perhaps an increase in the floor area ratio, because there's a comment by Mr. Cole that perhaps we can add some square footage to two-bedroom units. Other than that, they appear to be C variances, which reflect in large part existing conditions. As I indicated before, the application and the property is pre-exists. I have one of these books in my office. I usually keep the books. Anybody ever see anything like this? They're outdated now. This is a land use and development ordinance, chapter 102, from the code of the borough of Somerville. I thought it would come in handy one day. I didn't realize it. But in light of proceeding tonight, in this book, which is an official record, the land use and development ordinance, chapter 102, was adopted in 1979, and at that time you had no POR zone. Didn't exist. The dwelling existed and the garage existed before the POR zone existed. So to the extent that there's going to be a grandfather argument, the conditions of the premises as is pre-exist the ordinance. So having said that, I have 4 witnesses. My first witness is Tim Jones. He's from Wolf Properties. He's the principal, the only principal of Wolf Properties, and he'll be testifying as the owner and the applicant. And he'll address what he's proposing to do, as well as address relevant comments from Mr. Cole's report. My second witness is going to be Mark Katriniak from Ferrero Engineering. He's our civil engineer, and he will be handling the engineering aspects of the application and responding to those relevant portions of Mr. Cole's report. My third witness will be Mark Marion of Architecture Plus. He's our architect. He presented an architectural plan, sketch floor plans, floor plans, and elevations that will be presented to the board. He also has with him tonight an alternate plan in the event the board would like to see more space for the 2-bedroom units. We're not proposing that, but we're amenable to it. And then finally, I have our planner, Alex Dougherty, will be testifying as to the variances and pitch in on the waivers and exceptions, which will be handled by Mr. Katriniak. So having said that, I did provide notice, I published notice, and I served the notice, so I believe the board has jurisdiction. I would like confirmance of the jurisdiction so we can proceed.
I believe, given what you've done in terms of your the revisions to to what the relief you needed, yes, you have your notice is sufficient. The board can accept jurisdiction.
All right, thank you. So I'll grab a seat and call my first
Would you like me
witness.
to swear in all your witnesses now, or swear them one at a time, however you want to present?
Whatever will expedite, because we're staring into October land or November land.
All right, we'll do one. I prefer one at a time, and everybody's different, so go ahead.
One at a time is good. Ken, you want to get up there?
please raise your right hand, sir? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Timothy Jones, Jones.
Very good. Mr. Linus?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Gibbons. Tim, you can sit down, relax. Take it easy. Okay, what is your relationship to Wolf Properties LLC?
I'm the owner.
Okay, you're also the applicant in these proceedings.
Correct.
Would you care to tell the board when you purchased the property?
June 2019.
June 2019, and when you purchased the
No, I'm
property?
sorry, 2009.
2009. And when you purchased the property in 2009, and you submitted what we call an existing conditions plan, did you purchase it under those existing conditions?
Yes.
And what were those existing conditions relating to the structures on the property?
A duplex and 6 garages.
6 garages, 6-bay garage in the rear of the property, is that
Correct.
correct? Okay. Now, what are you proposing to do, should this board grant you approval?
I'd like to expand the second floor over the first floor, not increasing the footprint, and make 2 nice apartments up above. And I'd like to move my own office out of Raritan into Somerville for my own office.
Sorry.
You know, and in that, you know, fix up the house, make it an office I could be proud of, and apartments I could be proud of. And I really enjoy Somerville, and would like to, you know, base my office there and be able to stroll down the street and get lunch and all that stuff. So,
Okay, for the record, what is your business?
I am a real estate developer. I build single-family homes.
And you would like to occupy your offices should they approve it for your business, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And how many employees do you anticipate on the site?
I have 3 people. Myself work full-time, and I have a part-time person also, so 4 would occupy it.
4 would occupy the offices on the first floor.
Right, 1 part-time. Right.
And you're also proposing, and what would your hours of operation be?
Standard hours, 8 to 4, 8 to 5.
That would be Monday through Saturday or Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday. Okay. Now, you're also proposing to add some space to the garage. There's a garage in the rear of the property. For purposes of the record, how many bays are there in the garage?
6.
There are 6 bays, 6
Correct.
garage doors, okay. What is your proposal for use of the second floor, if you will, second story, if you will, or the add-on to the garage? What is your reason for proposing that?
Well, right now it's a flat roof that has leak problems, and you know, pitched roof in my mind is always better than a flat roof. If I could, I would like to eliminate the flat roof problem and build, you know, a better looking structure also, with some gable windows, doghouse windows on there, make it look nice. Parking in there every day. And while I'm expanding that and fixing the roof, I'd like to have some storage up there. I have tons and tons of files that I like to keep for 7 years or more. They take up a ton of space. Stuff like that, you know, just some storage. That's really it.
Now, during the course of these proceedings, did you have occasion to meet with the Historic Advisory Commission, and particularly
Yes.
Mr. Decker?
Yeah, I met Mr. Decker on site. We walked around the home, inside the home, and he commented the only problem he might have with it is the stone that I wanted to put on the plan, because I'm just fond of putting stone on the front of these elevations, and tried to have a design of a craftsman style, which is an older style of home on the plans.
All right,
Excuse me, this isn't in a historic district. So that's just moving.
right. Did Mr. Decker have the opportunity to send you a communication on May 13th? And
Correct.
suggested that we present it to the board?
Yes.
Okay. You want to identify this? Is this the email that was sent to you?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to mark this A1, Mr. Chairman?
For the A4.
Excuse me?
A1 in evidence, please put the date on, tonight's date on it. A4. A4, A4?
One is
Oh, did you pre-mark?
for our engineering site plan. Two is architecture plus 3 is gold. Fine.
All right.
A4 in today's date.
What's it say?
Okay, I could read it, it's very short.
Yes.
And we did file it today with the board clerk. Tim, that's it. I presented details of our meeting at the site with my committee, Somerville Historic Advisory Committee, HAC, and there were no further concerns other than the stone veneer mentioned in the email string below, which some thought didn't quite match the architectural style of the house. You and I discussed this briefly. Did you come up with any ideas? In any case, it is not a game breaker. As discussed, we're primarily concerned with the streetscape and the architectural integrity of the building. You and Frank can use this email as a confirmation of vetting the project with the HAC. Jim Ruggieri from the County Planning Board is retired. I have not much communication with his replacement. Feel free to call or email me if you have any questions or need to discuss. That's the entire content.
Where is this, are you proposing the stone?
Yeah. I mean, that's what's on the architecturals, correct.
Where is this, where is it? Where's the stone gonna be?
Oh, on the front porch, if you're familiar with the house, it's a front porch with a roof over it, sticking out in front of the home. And right now, there's brick, couple brick columns, and I want to do that in stone instead.
All right, our planner will have photographs of the home in question and the site in question, so you'll be able to see it when he's up here presenting it. Okay, now, Mr. Katriniak, your engineer, is going to talk about parking and the number of parking spaces and how they fit or don't fit on the site. But there's a comment by Mr. Cole that we need to address. You're not proposing any medical uses.
No.
And we do realize that if in the future some medical use comes in, they have to come back to the board because that might alter the parking configuration and certainly alter what's required by the ordinance. So you understand that?
Correct.
Okay. Now, there's also a couple of comments that I want you to address from Mr. Cole's report. I'm sure if I miss it, somebody will bring it up. The sidewalk may need some repairs, so you're prepared to do that?
Yes.
Okay. And in addition to that, let me ask you about your sewer connection. You're connected to the sewer, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you don't see any change in sewer activity?
No, it's an existing sewer, really.
So you don't believe you need to get another sewer connection fee? It's the same sewer, correct?
Correct.
Okay. However, are you agreeable to the suggestion by Mr. Cole that since it is a rather old property, that you could meet with the borough engineer or the borough's representative to take photos of the sewer line, and if it needs some repair, we'll
Sure.
so you're amenable to that. Now, once again, we're just going back quickly to the garage. It's your intention to use the garage as an accessory, the upper floor of the garage is an accessory to the proposed uses of office.
Correct.
And again, there are 6 bays to the garage, 6 doors, and we'll see them in the photographs. You want to occupy 4 of those?
Correct. There'll be 2 apartments and an office, so I'd like to give 2 garage bays to the 2 apartments, and take the other 4 for myself and my business.
Now, there was also a suggestion by Mr. Cole that in other redevelopment areas in the town, Somerville usually requires 1,000 square feet for apartments, bedroom apartments. And I think our proposal is in the neighborhood of 850 or 860 or thereabouts. Did you discuss with your architect tonight, we'll talk about it, possibly increasing the square footage if the board wants you to go in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be advantageous to take my architect's suggestion of expanding the second floor 3 feet overhang on the rear to increase the size of the apartments to be more with the Somerville's ordinance.
And not to steal his thunder, but he does have an exhibit here tonight.
Correct.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Let's ask if there's anyone in the public. First of all, let's see if there's anyone in the public.
Mr. Chair, not to interrupt you, but I do have an additional question for the witness. In light of the fact that we're attempting to prove that the garage existed and the house existed way back when, before the POR zone was created, did I ask you to order some aerial photograph maps?
Yes.
Okay. I want to show you a map that's certified aerial 1956.
Correct.
Is this the map you
Yes.
obtained? I'd like to mark it A5.
Sure, and that depicts,
That depicts the garage in existence in 1956 and the duplex certainly in existence in 1956.
okay, you obtain these maps? You obtain, you.
Yeah, there's a website, historical aerials, and I obtained it, and that's got their stamp on it, or
All right.
signature on
Okay, I have a number of copies so the board can look at it.
Thank you, counsel. That is marked A5, tonight's date.
it. It could have gone back to 1930, but it was very unlegible.
And now I think that's it for this witness, Mr. Chair.
All right,
Questions from board members?
well, until we go to the public first, or you want to do the board members first? What's-
Probably better to have board members there than members there to the public.
Okay, board members, any questions of the witness?
For your business, what are you going to be storing in the garage? Business vehicles or backhoes or?
No backhoes, for sure.
How big you put them back there?
Cars and, maybe some extra materials, some build stuff like that. Nothing major, because, trying not to hoard stuff like I used to, mostly cars, I would say.
Are those all single bays, like they have walls in there that separate all the?
They
bays?
do, some do, some don't. It's very hot in cars, it's constantly putting band-aids on it. Now I like to press it up and make it nice.
Any other board members? Hearing none, if there's anyone in the public who has a question of this particular witness, you can ask that question or two now.
Please identify yourself by name and address, and feel free to ask questions as to the testimony the witness has provided.
These are all your people?
Yeah, there's always
I said there's nobody from the public, we'll just bypass that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's the argument.
All right, Counselor?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mark Contreras.
Your witnesses will remain for the duration of the hearing, correct, counsel? What happened there?
Nice call.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Certainly. Mark Katryak, K-A-T-A-R-Y-N-I-A-K.
Very good. Mr. Lindis, your witness, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Mark?
Yes, I got two additional exhibits.
We usually have, is the camera working?
Camera's there.
We usually have a tripod right over there in the doorway, but I don't know where it is.
Something behind there. Is that a colorized, that corner?
Yes.
Okay, that should be marked.
Oh, yeah.
That should be marked as A6.
Thank you. Now, you can get it at such an angle where the video camera will pick it up as well as the board members.
Looks like the old places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The old days.
That's Supervisor Anthony. One leg and one dropped.
All right, Mark, while you're setting up and before you proceed with your testimony, you want to pre-mark the exhibits
Yeah.
in the fourth and
I have-
the decade.
This was A6?
A6.
Yeah. Okay, this, A6 is zoning and aerial map exhibit, thank you, Tim, if you want.
Counselor, what
You
is,
want to identify that a little bit more clearly, Mark, for the record?
Counselor, what is his expertise? What is his?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
We'll get to that. You're not delivering testimony now, you're just marking.
Yeah, all right, so I've got a plan entitled zoning and aerial map exhibit. It's an aerial plan taken from Google Earth showing the property in question and surrounding areas.
All right, you just identify the exhibit.
Well, Mr. Lewis, could you qualify your witness?
Okay, I'll do that first. I'll do that first. Yes. All right, Mr. Katriniak, who will you employ?
Ferrero Engineering, 180 Main Street, Chester, New Jersey.
All right, you want to give the board and any members of the public who are here the benefit of your educational and professional background, qualifications, and
Sure.
experience?
I hold a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from New Jersey Institute of Technology. I'm a New Jersey licensed professional engineer. In the state of New Jersey, my license is in good standing. Been practicing engineering on the land development stage for over 25 years. I've represented multiple boards around New Jersey as well as represented developments. I've testified and been accepted as an expert in engineering for planning, zoning board, the Superior Court,
That's good enough.
State House.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Did you participate in either the preparation and or supervision of the site plans that are before the board this evening?
Yes, I supervise the preparation.
And in your capacity as a professional engineer, are you familiar with the ordinances of the Borough of Somerville?
Yeah.
As well as the municipal land use law?
Man. And I have just to make it a little smoother here, I have a couple of exhibits marked. First one I just described, I'll just repeat it for the record. A6, which is a zoning and aerial map exhibit, which is an aerial photography, aerial satellite imagery of the site and the surrounding areas with the zoning map overlaid on the aerial divisions. I have an additional aerial.
Excuse me, do we have to mark those?
Yeah, that one was marked, A6.
I had it marked at A6 and dated tonight. Please do the same, or A6, A7, I'm sorry.
This one is
Tonight's
A7.
date.
I have another one-sheet exhibit entitled Aerial Map, which I marked A7. This is a composite of satellite imagery of the property in question with the proposed site plan and landscaping superimposed on the aerial exhibit. I have one final exhibit. The site plans have already been marked as A1, I believe. They were submitted with the application, they're here for presentation purposes. I have an additional colored exhibit of the landscaping plan, one sheet exhibit entitled Landscape Maintenance Services, a landscaping plan by Landscape Maintenance Services.
Marked A8.
8.
Yes, A8, with tonight's date.
Okay.
All right, Mark, will you want to take the board through what the existing conditions of the site are?
You have a subject property is a, everyone hear me? If I stand here? I'll talk loud.
Yeah, I think you're okay then.
Okay. We have a single interior lot as the subject of this application. It is located one property to the west of the intersection of West End Avenue and North Dawdy Avenue. The signalized intersection. Just opposite the site is the triangular island area that splits West End and West Main Street. So you sort of have one immediately in front of the property. You've got a small area that's just a single westbound lane in front of the property. The property itself, there's on-street parking in front of the property itself. The property itself, describing the lot characteristics first, has a number of existing variances associated with the existing property. We have, I'm going to be referring to Exhibit A7, just to bring it a little closer. The property in question, as was mentioned before, is located in the POR zone.
Hold on a second, Mr. Jones, we got a camera right behind you.
Oh, no. Makes sense.
Okay, go ahead.
Property in question is located in the POR zone. It borders the B1 zone immediately to the east. The balance of the properties to the north, west, and south are in the POR zone as well. There's the overlay zone referring to Exhibit A6. The Special Improvement District zone is also bordering, is adjacent to, but not including the lot. Borders the lot immediately to the north and to the east of the subject property. The uses in the general vicinity of the site, as I'm sure everyone is aware, immediately to the east is a 3-story mixed-use apartment building and commercial building. We have the fire museum sort of catty corner to the rear of the property, to the north and east. Across the street, we have a 4-story mixed-use building across the street, residential development, senior housing to the west, residential housing in the general vicinity of the balance of the property. The lot itself, as indicated in Mr. Cole's report, and I concur, the lot itself is a single lot, is slightly undersized for area, 9,912 square feet existing where 10,000 is required. It is non-compliant for width, undersized, 57.12 existing where 60 feet is required. It is otherwise compliant for depth, lot frontage. So the existing lot is undersized both in area and width, although both values are slightly under and not excessively under the limitations of or the requirements of the property. As you can see from the exhibit on A7, you have built up properties almost to the property line to the east and north, so you really don't have an opportunity here. The funeral home is immediately to the west, I failed to mention before, but you have built up properties really on all 3 sides, really with no real ability to bring the lot into conformity. As terms of the existing physical conditions on the property is presently improved with a single-story, 1.5-story duplex residential unit towards the front or south end of the property. To the rear of the property, almost side to side of the property line, is a single-story 6-bay garage. At the rear of the property, there's a driveway that extends off of West End Avenue, serves the property along the easterly property line, runs along the easterly side of the existing structure. The rear of the lot, between the garage, detached garage, and the dwelling, is essentially all gravel areas, all clear gravel areas. There's very little landscaping on the property today. There's some small trees of somewhat questionable health and value along the easterly property line. Very insignificant landscaping on the west side. So for the most part, we have a developed site with gravel parking areas located between the garage and the dwelling. And with that come several variances, some existing variance conditions, non-conformities with respect to the structures. Starting with the principal structure, we have compliant front yard setback, 25.9 where 25 is required. We have a compliant rear, 76 where 25 is required. Those will not be changed with the proposed application. With the exception of if the apartments, you'll hear architectural testimony, if the apartments do get increased, enlarged slightly, the rear yard setback from the second floor will decrease slightly, but is well in excess of the minimum requirement of 25 feet. And you've got 76 to the rear of the structure now. The side yards are non-compliant. You have a single side yard of 4.6 where 8 is required. You have a combined side yard requirement of 20 where 19.6 is existing and proposed. Again, these are conditions that will remain unchanged with the proposed application. So the footprint of the dwelling and the variances or nonconformities associated with the principal structure will remain unchanged with the application. With respect to the accessory structure to the rear, you have a non-compliant garage structure for the rear yard setback is And for this particular garage, the requirement yields a 12.5-foot requirement for rear yard setback. We have 2 foot approximately. The side yards, for a single side yard, the requirement is 8, where we have 1 existing and proposed. A combined side yard requirement of 20, where 2.8 is existing and proposed. The garage itself cannot exceed 600 square feet by your ordinance. In this case, the existing garage, unchanged footprint, is 1,071 square feet. The height, as was indicated in Mr. Linus's opening, will be compliant at 16 feet with the proposal for the peak roof on the garage. So the existing nonconformities with respect to the accessory structure in terms of its dimensional qualities and property setback locations remain existing and proposed equal. They remain unchanged with the proposed application. Mr. Cole, the lot coverage on the property is also non-conforming. As I had indicated, we have developed it essentially to the 4 sides of the property. 50% is permitted in the zone maximum. The existing conditions is approximately 81.8%. We are slightly reducing that. We'll be non-compliant. We're reducing 81.8 to 79.8. So we're reducing that slightly with the introduction of some landscaping, which I'll describe in further detail. We have a number of waivers, and I'll
Right, before we get to the number of waivers, you did have an opportunity to review Mr. Cole's memorandum.
Yes.
And on page 5, note C, he says the site plan should be amended to include his zoning table and list of required variances.
Yes.
And you've agreed to do that, is that not correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now I'd like to take you to also page 5 of this review, performance standards.
Yes.
Are you ready to?
Yeah, I was going to do performance standards and waivers. Yep, I'll do those together. We believe that the performance, I'll start with performance standards, as you mentioned that, with respect to parking and circulation. We have a single-use office user on the first floor. We have 2 residential, 2-bedroom apartments on the proposed second floor. We believe that the parking configuration, and I'm going to, I'll orient the board here, what you have superimposed here on the aerial exhibit is, you'll see the introduction of some landscaping along the west of the property line, which I'll describe in further detail later, along with immediately adjacent to the northwest corner of the building. We've got some front yard landscaping proposed. What we've done is we've organized the parking. We intend to propose to pave the parking lot. With the paving of the parking lot, we're going to add an inlet to the rear of the property in close proximity to the northeast corner of the building. We will run the drain line south to Western Avenue. We're going to provide a trench drain at the back of the curb the driveway apron. They'll pick up the driveway runoff. That will give us the ability, that was a suggestion of Mr. Cole's report. That will give us an opportunity to grade the paved parking lot to the proposed inlet, pick up the downspouts that exist in the driveway, and as well as tie in the roof leaders for the proposed building into the drainage system. And that will connect the existing drainage structure in West End Avenue. The paved parking lot will then be striped. The way we've organized the parking with the site plans submitted that are presented in Exhibit 1. We've organized the parking in such a way, as Mr. Jones indicated. The 6-bay parking garage will be jointly used by the residential tenants as well as the single tenant owner of the office on the first floor. The 2 easternmost driveway bays will be dedicated for the residential use. The 4 to the west will be for the office use. We've organized 6 parking spaces in tandem to the parking garages in front of the garage. The 2 corresponding to the residential garage spots will be dedicated to the residential use as well too. So each apartment will have a garage and a tandem surface parking.
That'll be compliant with the RIS's requirements, correct?
The total quantity of parking will comply with the RSI's requirements for 2 parking spaces for each one of the apartments. So we'll have a total of 4 parking spaces for the residential use. We're proposing a total of 10 other parking spaces for the office use, which we believe is more than adequate for the single tenant use. We may be able to modify that by reducing that. However, the 10 parking spaces gives us a compliant parking design. So 14 parking spaces total on the site is what is required by the combination of the ordinance and the RSI standards for the 2 uses on the site. We can, in order to accommodate some of the suggestions made by Mr. Cole, we can eliminate at least one of those parking spaces through a modification that I think, a little bit from an operational standpoint, as you heard, you have a single user office with 4 employees. We think we can cut down on that parking space. But just to orient the board in terms of what was proposed, we've organized tandem spaces in front of the parking garage, which again, we recognize is not permitted by your ordinance typically, but because we have a single user office, owner office, we have 2 residential units, we've organized the parking to be in front of the driveway, so the surface parking spaces and the corresponding garage space are sort of owned or occupied by the same user, so we believe we have a situation that can be managed on site. In addition, we were proposing required 1 handicap parking space along the westerly property line, close to the building, and we have 1 glass parking space at 90 degrees to the building towards the easterly corner. What we are proposing to do, and I believe it eliminates a couple of waivers that were cited in the review report, is we're proposing to flip-flop these 2 parking spaces. So we're going to relocate the ADA parking space to be adjacent to the building. We have sufficient room for the required door area and handicap parking space at 90 degrees to the building. We'll put that 10th parking space in place of the handicap space along the westerly property line. Or if the board should fit, or we are comfortable proposing to remove that parking space, but that would require a parking variance for 1 space deficiency. But that would provide some additional opportunity for more landscaping and reduction in impervious cover. So that would increase a variance for a proposed parking condition, but would eliminate a waiver for the parking. What that also does is it eliminates a waiver for the driveway width. The aisle presently right now, there's a 24-foot drive aisle, but it's kind of encroached by 2 westerlymost parking spaces with the handicap parking space. By removing that, even if we were to leave that 10 spaces, we can provide the 24-foot aisle, so we will eliminate that waiver.
Just a question, I'm curious, you referred to handicap parking spaces and ADA parking spaces.
I'm sorry, one and the same.
Okay, very good.
One and the same, yes.
Because you had indicated there's an ADA space next to the building, and then a handicap space, it appeared, was elsewhere on the parking.
We're proposing the handicap space or the ADA compliant space, as the plans as submitted showed it along the westerly property line. We're proposing to, in light of after reviewing the comments from Mr. Cole, seeing that the location of this space resulted in a waiver for encroachment into the drive aisle. Taking a second look at it so we can relocate that handicap or ADA compliant space to the location where we show it as a conventional parking space along the building. So by switching the location of these 2 parking spaces, we can eliminate the waiver for the drive aisle. We do show a temporary loading zone area here along the end of the aisle, and the typical. I don't know if it was covered in Mr. Jones' direct, but in my discussion with Mr. Jones, the typical type of deliveries that would be expected for this office use would be conventional UPS mail deliveries. So deliveries would be limited to those types of deliveries that were typically in a typical UPS truck or van that could be either accommodated either on the street for a walk-up or with a temporary location in the back. And again, they would only temporarily block the spaces that are owned by the office use only. So again, we feel we have a manageable situation on the lot. So with the relocation of the ADA compliant space or handicap space to the rear of the building along the easterly corner, we can eliminate the waivers for the drive aisle width. If we were to eliminate the conventional parking space here, we would require the variance for the number of parking. We also require, we are requesting a waiver for providing curbing on the site. We're proposing to have sheet flow from the edge of the pavement along the westerly and easterly sides of the property. The grading of the property relatively flat, but it does run from north to south towards the front of the property. We can grade the property to the inlet, provide some sheet flow to the landscaping buffers proposed along the westerly border, and the with the narrowness of the drive aisle along the easterly side, which is existing and remains unchanged, we believe that providing the sheet flow to the existing sort of area just adjacent to this building is a better alternative than narrowing the cartway width with the introduction of curbing. So we would be seeking that waiver. We're proposing to, we're requesting a waiver for shade trees on the property, and just because we do have landscaping, but we don't have really deep room to provide the adequate shade trees, and we're requesting that waiver. We're proposing to remove the stated waiver for street trees. We will add 2 street trees to the property along West End Avenue. We are also proposing to eliminate the stated waiver for lighting. In Mr. Cole's report, he indicates it's either compliant or waiver, but just depending on the way the lighting is configured. And that is because we did not show lighting along the front of the property by the driveway. We're proposing to add a 3rd lighting element at the front, so we'll stipulate that we'll comply with the lighting requirement with the addition of the 3rd light. Staying on lighting for a second, because this is easy, most site plans lighting gets a little dicey, but in this case it's pretty easy.
Reference these out at section B of Mr. Cole's report on page 7. Site plan.
We will comply with the requirements for the LED lighting color scale as indicated in Mr. Cole's report. We have a total of 3 lights proposed, 1 mounted on the garage, 1 mounted in the rear of the building, and about a 3rd at the front of the building.
Just 1 in the back of the building?
There's 2, yeah. 1 on the building and 1 on the garage.
1 on the garage, yeah. There's 2 in the back that illuminate the parking area. One's on the garage and one's on the front building. In covering the sort of the variances in the waiver, it's with the minimal site work we're faced with really a completely built out site here across the lot. We are really making no physical changes to the footprint of the improvements other than the reduction of the impervious cover. I will flip to exhibit A8. Show you, I think it's a little clearer to see the landscaping on the dedicated plan as opposed to the aerial. We're proposing, in the image here you see closer to some of the plants that are being proposed and selected by the landscape architect. We're proposing a series of hollies for an evergreen screen along the westerly border of the property between the garage and the rear of the building. We are proposing a blend of grasses and landscaping at the rear of the building, particularly adjacent to the building entrance and the westerly property line. The easterly side, as was indicated, would be the handicap or ADA compliant parking space. We're providing some landscaping, some foundation plantings along the easterly side of the building between the existing driveway and the building where we have room for the basement entrance. And then we're providing a streetscape landscape scheme across the front of the porch, which really enhance the porch. That kind of ties into the landscaping that exists at the funeral home adjacent, and we're providing a similar landscaping scheme that will enhance the porch and provide that. There was a number of comments in Mr. Cole's report, and I'm sorry for jumping around, but it's easier to stay on topic with each element of the site. Jumping to Mr. Cole's report on landscaping, which is
Page 8, item
page 8.
C.
Thank you, Mr. Lennis. There are a number of comments there regarding technical details for landscaping. We will stipulate to comply with all the requirements in your report, Mr. Cole. There was one comment, there was the comment about the street trees, and as I indicated, we will amend the plan to include 2 street trees along West End Avenue. There's a comment in comment number 6 on page 9. There's a comment about the longevity or the viability of a particular type of shrub proposed along the northerly side, the holly. We will agree to replace that with a more compatible species. As I indicated with respect to parking and circulation, there are a number of comments in the performance standards section, jumping back to page 5 of Mr. Cole's report, with respect to the loading area, the parking demand, the stacked parking, and as I had indicated, I'll just jump back to exhibit A7. as I indicated in this particular instance with respect to the tandem parking, because we have a single office, a small office with a total of 4 employees, single occupancy office, we have a manageable parking situation with 4 employees, 4 cars on site. The need to actually even utilize a lot of the tandem parking spaces is really not necessary, but the area is needed for access to the garage, so we think it's appropriate to strike those for that parking. And again, if you have all of the occupants in the office that are working on the same essential schedule, we believe we have a manageable situation with respect to the tandem parking. Even if we were to eliminate the one and only provide 9 parking spaces where 10 is required, it's well in excess of the employee count we have here with 4 employees. It gives Mr. Jones a little opportunity to provide parking should his operation expand, and he should hire an additional employee or 2. With respect to the apartment uses, we have 2 2-bedroom apartments. Each apartment provides for a tandem parking arrangement for 2 parking spaces. 2 per unit is required by RSIS, so we're fully compliant there. Again, with the individual apartment, it's an easy or manageable enough situation to have 2 parking spaces in tandem for each one of the units. There will be signs installed on the garage indicating that those parking spaces are dedicated for the apartment. So while the tandem parking spaces are not permitted by the ordinance, we believe in this case it's a manageable way to avoid the shortfall in parking, placing demand on on-street parking, and if we had a lot of site room to play with and we were to put the parking in another location, we would be adding impervious coverage, which is generally not desirable from a stormwater standpoint. And secondly, we would need this asphalt area anyway for access to the garage bays anyway. So we're trying to take efficient use of the existing space that we have available here. We have sufficient distance between the principal structure and the parking spaces for the parking to circulate. As was indicated, the loading zone is only a temporary encroachment, and there's adequate room for in-turning to exit the site. There's a comment about the existing driveway regarding the width of the driveway. We are non-compliant with the driveway. 20 feet is required for 2-way circulation. I think we're at 11, just slightly over 11, which again is an existing and proposed condition. We are unable to widen the driveway because of the location of the building, the location of the adjacent building and property line. Again, as a straight alignment, short throw driveway with a single user office, I think it's important to recognize here that as a small single user office, we do have a manageable situation with respect to the driveway. If this were a multi-tenant office building or a full commercial site where you had less either control or you had more frequent parking or circulation coming and going from the site throughout the day that you had no control over, I think the 2-way circulation would be more problematic. But in this particular case, you have residential users, driveway, this driveway is certainly consistent with a conventional residential driveway configuration that you would have in many instances. And because you have a small office with a single occupant, you have a manageable situation or a controlled situation with essentially everyone arriving in the morning, leaving in the afternoon. It's a one-way driveway. The sight lines along West End Avenue, the driveway, are somewhat limited by the on-street parking. But again, because of the low intensification of the use with the one user office and low number of employees that are capable of being occupied in that building, we have minimal concerns with the operation of the driveway. The condition of the sidewalk and driveway apron will be corrected as part of the proposed improvements to the site. Mr. Jones had indicated he would replace the sidewalk and driveway apron as part of the proposed improvements.
I just want to slow down just a little bit.
Sure.
Do speak very quickly.
You're starting to repeat yourself too.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I get all the points there. So
I have one question, if I could, I don't mean to interrupt you on this. You had discussed the availability of property outside the site. You can certify to the board that there's no property available to bring the bringing the subject property into compliance with the zoning ordinance?
Yes, as per Mr. Katriniak's testimony and the exhibits you have before the board, you can see that there's no opportunity.
Right.
No opportunity whatsoever to increase the size of the subject lot, which has been that size since whatever.
I just want to get that on the record because it would appear you're certainly, some of the variances you're requesting are C1, so that's key evidentiary issue. Go ahead, sir.
Okay,
Didn't
thank
mean
you.
to interrupt you.
Actually, you caught me right at my closing, so I think I finished there. I've addressed the stormwater management comments, I believe, with respect to Mr. Cole's report, the introduction of the drainage improvements as I had described.
All right, not so fast, Mr. Katriniak. In terms of the waivers or design exceptions, I think they're technically design exceptions from the site plan review section of the ordinance. Do you believe that what you've testified to, you have an opinion as to whether the requests are reasonable?
I think they are. I think the proposal offers an improvement to the property. The existing conditions are not to the detriment of the proposed operations, and I believe that the site can function safely and efficiently with the existing conditions that are in place. I think the variances requested.
Do you believe that you have an opinion as to whether the waivers, exceptions requested are consistent with the general purpose and intent of site plan review, and little enforcement would be impracticable or exact undue hardship because of peculiar conditions relating to the land?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you think that the board would be justified, if they choose to approve this application, to approve the waivers and exceptions?
I do, yes.
And then we have our planner sitting on deck somewhere to testify as to the variances.
That's correct. The planner will come up and reinforce my testimony, but I believe we have taken an opportunity here to where we can make improvements to the site. We have, and we believe those variances and
All
waivers
right.
are justified.
Did you address section H, particularly 3, 5, and 6 on page 16?
Yes. With respect to the general comments, item H on page 16 of Mr. Cole's report, jumping to item number 3, there was a concern raised about the closeness of the northeast corner of the building to the driveway. We propose to install 2 bollards at the corner of the driveway and the drive aisle there to protect the building from any vehicle impacts. Item number 4, as Mr. Jones indicated, will utilize the existing sanitary sewer connections for the site. In fact, from a utility standpoint, all of the existing utilities that presently serve the building will be utilized for the proposed use. And I did address the curbing with respect to the proposed use.
And all sign, number 6, all signage
We
is
will
striped.
comply with, yes, with all the striping for item number 6. Yes.
What's the status of any outside agency approvals?
We have applied to the Somerset County Planning Board. We have been deemed technically incomplete, largely due to the fact that we required a municipal approval first. The other comments that were in the letter were really insignificant, but we will make the necessary resubmission to the County Planning Board and seek County Planning Board approval. We don't believe a NJDOT approval is necessary here. Although the driveway accesses the state highway, we're not increasing traffic to the threshold limits required by the DOT Access Management Code that would require an amended permit. So we believe that the DOT is not applicable.
You're just going to continue to work under the existing permitting?
Correct.
Okay.
Mike, do you have a problem with that?
I agree with the driveway, but he's gonna need a permit for the catch basin plan.
If we need an occupancy permit for the catch basin time, we'll
No, he's gonna need a permit to tie
Yeah,
into
permit.
a DOT structure.
Right.
That's Route 28, so the tying of the pipe will, regardless of the occupancy, it will require DOT approval.
we will stipulate to that.
We have a condition of all approvals, if the board is so inclined, that you have to comply with all state, county, and federal permitting to have your approval valid.
I've heard this twice. To clarify this, no one's saying you have to put a new sanitary sewer lateral on. Because the flows are increasing, you will need a permit from the SRDSA. So And I'm suggesting that this lateral be televised for the integrity. If it's found to be in poor shape, then repair is as needed. And that's an I&I question. So no one's saying put a new lateral in. I'm saying the rules have changed about 4 years ago. The SRVA will.
Hold on, time out, no more initials.
Okay, it's the sewer authority. The sewer authority the borough ties into. Somerville Valley Authority, the sewage authority, now has to require a connection fee if you increase the flows, even though the footprint. That was changed doing the COA regulations so that to offset COA costs for connection fees, they're charging now everyone in connection if the gallons go up. For example,
the flow is going to be increased.
The flow is going to go up because of the potential offices, therefore there's going to be a fee. The laterals, I'm not saying the lateral's undersized, I'm not saying that. I'm saying he's going to have to get approval, which is essentially in this case, paying a fee to the regional sewage authority. And then I have a comment because of the age of the building. These laterals we're finding in town are in very poor shape because they're 100 years old, that they introduce a lot of infiltration and inflow into the sewer system. In this case, it would be inflow. So I'm suggesting that it be televised with our inspector to make sure it's in decent shape. If it's not in decent shape, repairs as needed.
The applicant and owner has agreed to that as a potential condition.
Yeah.
One last outside agency I was mentioned in the report is the Gulf Irrigation Somerset County Soil Conservation District. That again, we don't believe is applicable here because we're not disturbing the threshold requirements, which is 5,000 square feet. Right. We're under that limit on disturbance, so we don't believe that would be necessary.
I think there's one item regarding the lighting, and that has to do with a motion sensor or some type of.
Yes, on how the lighting will operate. Yes, the applicant's proposing to install photocells and motion sensors on the two lights in the rear of the property, so that they would be essentially time dusk to dawn, but they would go off with lack of motion in the area, so there would be no excessive lighting.
And for purpose of reference, that's on page 7, item B, site lighting number 4. Okay, I have no further questions of the Secretary.
Board members, any questions?
Well, the only question I have is I'm hearing that the driveway works and the stack parking works, given that it's a single-use office occupancy. So is the applicant saying this is a single-use office?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just making sure. So in the future, if it's a mixed use, it's going to have to go back to the board.
Correct.
For the testimony given to. I'm just making sure we're aware of what we're saying here.
Right, look, let me just understand, if I, brought my office down and slowed down my business and I was the only one working in there, am I allowed to rent an office?
No.
No.
I mean, is there any way to stipulate that, to limit it to, 4 people working or 5 people working?
No, it would be a condition, should the board approve this, saying that if you wanted to go with mixed use, you'd have to go back to the board, because frankly, the stack parking does not work. And then if you have the intensity of different offices, the testimony from the engineer is this single-use driveway works because of the low intensity of the site, because you only have one use of the office. If you have 3 or 4 other people and they're each renting one office space.
I'm saying if my business slowed.
Right.
I was working there by myself. I'm 59, I'm not gonna be working forever.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to say, hey, I can rent a small office to somebody and they're work by themselves and there would be 2 people in the office.
If you wanted, what I'm saying, if you wanted to do that, to make it a mixed use, you have to come back to the board for approval.
A mixed use for the office,
Yes.
Yes.
A non-single use.
a non-single use.
Yes.
That would have to, you can't do that now.
Well, your parking doesn't work now if you have a mixed use.
Well, if it works for 4 employees, why wouldn't it work with 4 people working there?
I would like to point out that the POR zone where we're located, this is a permitted use. Office use is a permitted use. We're not seeking any.
I'm not going there. I'm saying the parking only works for a single use by mere fact of stacking everything. It was mentioned that you're going to stack for the residential. okay? A garage and a use in front. That's permitted in the RSIS for a single house. For a mixed-use building, that is not permitted. So all the stacked parking that's being suggested here only works because you have one resident controlling it. So if the car is in the way, they say that a spouse, whatever it is, partner, move the car. In the office, it's the same way. He's got employees parking. That's an internal issue. As soon as you have mixed use, you can have people not in the building blocking other people. It just doesn't work.
Mike, it's your opinion that it.
That's right. That's what you're
It's
right.
only your opinion.
That's true. That's the concern. That's what I'm saying, to make
Yeah.
sure. Sometimes this gets confusing in the resolution.
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't work myself.
No, I understand. I'm just saying this is the concern. I'm making sure I'm trying
That's
to.
a concern,
That's all.
but, you know, if I have 3 or 4 employees here now and I go down to 1 or 2, what's the difference if one guy rents an office from me?
It's a different application,
It is? Is that true?
We essentially have two, if you'll have a tenant, you'll have two uses.
I mean,
That's how I would see it legally.
it's office space.
I see it slightly different based on the fact, although I do appreciate that, and that is a legitimate concern. Would it help in terms of perhaps eliminating 1 or 2 parking spaces?
yeah. You were already shy 8.
Well, no, we were proposing 14. Admittedly, the 2 tandems are part of that. You want to explain the parking there?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the overall size of the office building that's being proposed, there's a practical limit to how many employees you can actually fit in this building. So whether there's 5 people employed by one company or 3 and 2 by 2 individual companies, I think there's a practical self-limiting factor. I think from an operational standpoint, you'd have to manage the office similar to the way you would manage the residential. So you'd have to maybe, you know, the central garage bay would be dedicated to tenant A and westerly ones would be dedicated to tenant B. I think there's a way to manage it on the site with the tenant parking because the office is small enough where you can indicate to your employees and you can control that parking with the tandem arrangement. You'd have to provide probably some additional signage on the garage. But I think given the footprint of the office building and the amount of employees you can physically fit in the building based on just the available size, I think you've got a practical limit of actually how many people can actually work in this building. So as Mr. Jones indicated, if a lawyer or a CPA or a single user type office were to come in and just utilize one type of a use where it's only 1 employee or maybe 2 employees, it would actually be at the detriment of his employees because he couldn't fit them all in the same building. So I think it's still manageable in that sense. From a organizational standpoint, the current proposal application was a single use office, but we think that there may be situations and circumstances where the parking arrangement would work if you had a second tenant in the building. But,
Where would the clients park? Visitors and clients, where are they gonna
I
park?
don't have any clients.
I understand you don't,
Right.
but the next person, any approvals runs with the property, not the operator.
Right.
So I'm saying, I hear this talk about employees, what about visitors, what about clients? I have CPA moves in, you're gone in 10 years. Single-use office CPA moves in, and they have a staff of 4, where are the clients gonna park to visit them?
Mike, we're not gonna rule on that. We're ruling on what's in front of us. And that is a single-use office area for one client to use the first floor for his business and for 2 apartments on the second floor. All the rest of this is nonsense that we've been talking about, because that's not in front of us, correct?
Well, if it changes, they'd have to come back to the board.
That's what I'm saying, he's not changing it. But right now, that's what we're ruling on. We're ruling on the application in front of us. All the other stuff is superfluous. Let's talk about what's in front of us.
I agree with the chair's position on that regard. Having said that, in the event there's a change in an office use that's permitted, I would think that would be a planning board application, although that would be determined at the present time, at that time.
No, it wouldn't, in my opinion.
You have, because of the mixed mixed use?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah, and I think because we're exercising jurisdiction over it, I would believe that it would stay in front of us.
What the chairman is saying is we're going in the weeds, and I agree with him, but I'm just trying to stay on this to make sure that we're clear. I understand you have a different opinion on this. I'm just, I'm being this to death. I normally don't do this, but I can see confusion here, and I'm trying to avoid that when it comes to the resolution. And I understand the chairman's telling me to shut up, because we're here for single use. Don't go off in the weeds. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I'm looking at you, and I'm seeing the owner, and I'm seeing, no, I don't see what.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
I know, and that's why I'm just.
So I understand I'd have to go before you again. Okay.
Let's look at reality. This is in front of us.
Gotcha.
If in the future you don't need all those spaces and you want to rent them, you can do that. Who's going to police it? But if you do it, you're in violation of the zoning ordinance.
Gotcha.
Capiche?
Yes.
Let's go.
We're an international stage.
Let's go. You done?
I'm done.
Any other questions from the board?
Meeting shorthand, Capiche?
Counselor?
Okay, yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mark Lariat, please, our architect. Being half Sicilian, I appreciate your coming.
What's the other half?
I'm sure.
So that.
Oh, all right.
Being, sir. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the true self, God. Capiche? Go ahead. That's not like me, I'm sorry, but
Mr. Marion, could you give the board and the members of the public who might be here with the benefit of your educational and professional background, qualifications, and experience?
I have a bachelor's of architecture from Pratt Institute in '82. I've been an architect since '89. I'm a partner and principal in company Architecture Plus, operating out of Raritan since '91. And I'm for an office. Good.
And I currently hold your license.
License is good standing, and I've testified before dozens of them.
Okay, thank you. Would you participate in the preparation and or supervision of the architectural plans that are being presented to the board?
I did.
Okay. You want to address the building, first you want to describe what you're presenting. I think, did we mark it yet? Mark?
That drawing is the drawing that you have currently.
Okay, so that's the plan that was submitted to the board, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. It's revision number 1, and it's dated 2/24/22. It's schematic plans and elevations.
You want to briefly describe the plan?
Sure, it's an existing duplex building. It's split vertically, 2 tenants, 1 tenant on each side. It's about a 3,000 square foot building. The existing building has a 1-story addition that's been put on, I don't know when, on the back of this very old building. And what we're proposing is converting, as you know, the first floor to commercial space. Just going over to commercial space, there's really only 6 rooms in the commercial space. Most of the middle of the building is kind of devoted to circulation. The residential tenants have access from the rear only, and the commercial tenant has access from the front and the rear. So there's a hallway that wraps around, the stairs in the middle, and it's surrounded by 6 spaces, of which one of the spaces will probably be a break room, handicap bathroom, and there's going to be a conference room in there. So that really leaves like 4 rooms to occupy with employees.
just want to clarify. These are copies of the plans which are on file with the board, correct?
Correct.
Okay, well, then it'll mark that as evidence. All right, thank you, go ahead.
Yes. So this building will only hold so many people. Upstairs, we're creating 2 bedroom apartments, and the existing bedrooms to the front are basically going to remain as they are, and we're going to provide a kitchen living and dining areas to the rear. There'll be a central stair that comes up from the rear, and the doors will split to either side. And that is achieved by adding an addition on top of the one-story piece in the back. It's not really visible from the front, you won't ever notice it, except maybe heading east on the road in front. The garage in the back, I just want to clarify, we're just putting a pitched roof on it. We're not actually adding a second level. It's an attic. There's no stairs to the attic. We have a pull-down stair. So it's not really, I would consider it an attic, not a floor. It does have some dormers on there to make it look good and, well, better, because the current building is a flat roof. It's very tired.
All right, Mr. Marion, have you completed what you wanted to
Yes.
present so far? Okay. Have you had the opportunity to review Mr. Cole's May 11th memorandum?
I have.
And I'm directing you and the board to section E, starting on page 10, building architectural comments. You want to address those, please?
Let's talk about the proposed railing system. We're proposing a metal rail, and we're going to have to put handrails and the front steps on either side. That would be a requirement for code. There's a comment on, we're going to, all the addition and the garage will have matching shingles and roof colors to match the existing building on both the addition and the garages. He would like to run electric and water out to the garage. The applicant. There's nothing there now, so we obviously have to do that to get light on the garage. And we'd like at least to have a water spigot out there to take care of the landscaping. And the basement is only accessible by the commercial use. So that would be additional storage. It's pretty tired down there at the moment. It's an old basement, 1900s.
You see there's an entrance to the basement on the driveway side?
Yeah, I don't know if it
Maintain it?
actually works, 'cause it's more decorative than the doors. It's more like a hatch. It's a small entrance.
Well, I mean, it's, you look at the site plan, it seems to be a bit of an encumbrance.
Yeah, if you look at my right side elevation, you can see there's a door. It's kind of below graded. Probably was pole access at some point.
So my question is, can we eliminate that if you're not gonna use it, if it's just decoration?
Well, I was gonna keep it to put, bring my HVAC in and out and anything like that, rarely use it. It'd be a lot easier than dragging it through.
Right, so it'll be useful.
Yeah, rarely, but I think it would be useful, yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna fix it up, make it look nice.
The attic of the existing building, we'll put a scuttle or a pull-down stair in the hallway. So that's only going to be accessible by the owner. The only thing that's going to be up there is HVAC equipment.
So the basement and attic aren't finished.
Are not finished. And we will need some HVAC equipment on the outside, some condensers, and I think we want to propose them on the west side of the building. The mural parlor next door has a pretty large white fence that runs the whole length, I believe, of our property. And so these units won't even really be visible at all. And I think that covers.
Okay, and finally, Mark, there's a comment in Mr. Cole's report. I'm going to refer you to it and refer the board. It appears in general comments H on page 16, and it talks about number 2, the borough having 5 redevelopment areas. I don't believe we're in a redevelopment area, if I would say we're not. In any event, Mr. Cole points out that redevelopment plans, and this is not a redevelopment, well, not technically, it's not a redevelopment plan, but could be viewed as redevelopment of property. Generally requires 1,000 square feet for a two-bedroom apartment. The proposed two-bedroom apartments are less than 900 square feet. He's looking for testimony regarding the proposed size of the apartments.
Okay, so what you have before you, the apartments are 883 square feet and 876 square feet for apartment A and B. So you have an additional exhibit.
All right, that you'll have to mark. That was not presented. This is an exhibit in response to maybe what the board would like to see with respect to Mr. Cole's comments.
That would be A, I believe that's A9, is that what your
Yes.
notes indicate? Okay. You mark it A9 and date it today, please. And again, it's identified as,
Schematic plans and elevations, revision 2, dated 5/17/22. So here we look at the statement and we're proposing just cantilevering the addition of 3 feet out over the parking, to the rear, to the parking area. That will also provide additional coverage to the rear entry for the tenant and for all the tenants. And what that would do by pushing a second floor addition out the back 3 feet, it would enlarge the dining room, and living rooms of the residential units only, and get them to more 948 and 935 square feet. So we can pump up the units a little bit, get them closer to this 1,000 in a reasonable manner.
All right, and then finally, with respect to the height of the garage, you looked at the ordinance.
But the ordinance and the midpoint of the roof from the rear, which is actually the worst case scenario, it's actually like 15 and a half feet to the midpoint of the roof.
So under that scenario, it's compliant. No further questions.
You agree with that, Mike?
Yeah, it wasn't, the original plans, I had to scale it. I thought it was 16 and change.
Oh,
So
is it? Okay.
I prefer a scale, which
Yeah.
is, at this
We put a
point.
dimension to the ridge line, that's for 620 something, so
Right.
obviously confusion.
So the front facade changes, you're changing the doors out. The front 2 doors are being changed, right?
There'll be new doors, yes.
And you're taking that knee wall that splits the 2-family out.
Yes, there's a.
Okay, and then the columns are being shorter with those pillars. So
Right.
basically, the porch is being redone, but
Correct.
the rest of the facade in the front staying as is.
That's correct. The porch is being redone right now, there's like an open trellis work underneath.
Also point out that the testimony is that the addition to the garage will be for the sole exclusive use of the office user, correct? And I think the ordinance says that it can go as high as 25 feet, although we're not proposing it.
Correct. That is, for non-residential use, the accessory structures is 25 feet.
No further questions.
Is that your testimony?
Yes.
Okay, board members, since there's no one in the audience from the public, board members, questions?
A question for Mark is, you have that handicap spot out there, so you have a handicap bathroom. You gonna put a ramp back there, you think?
We were not proposing a ramp. The way the building code works, we do have to, any improvements that we do to the building.
100% of the portion of cost.
Yeah, and then we'll definitely have at least one handicap bathroom in there. There's not a lot of work on the commercial side
Right.
to be done. I mean, freshening it up for sure, but the bathroom is probably.
I don't think you have space for it.
So Mark, you're looking at 3 compressors then, one
Correct.
AC unit for space, and you got some on the western wall near the PVC fence.
Yes, that's correct.
do you will add a handicap bathroom, or we,
We will have to put in a handicap bathroom for that commercial use.
just want to make sure of that.
Any other board members? Questions? No? Okay, council?
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. Alex Doherty. Alex is our final witness, as the planner for the project.
Counselor, would you just suggest to the planner that, put this nicely, succinct brevity would be appreciated at this time of night?
I think
That's my specialty.
Perfect.
Used to go last when I get out of here.
Otherwise, you might give you stimuli, maybe.
We'll persuade Alex to be succinct or something. I think we capiche.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Alexander Dougherty, last name is Dougherty.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lynch, your witness.
All right, thank you very much. Alex, you want to give the board, and if members of the public who might be here, the benefit of your education, professional background, qualifications, experience?
Absolutely. I'm a licensed professional planner, state New Jersey, PP, licensed good and current. Also national certification ASCP, also current and good standing. Educational background is Erebach-Blaustein, concentration in development, redevelopment, certification in public policy, and a master's in city and regional planning.
It's good enough.
And you currently are PP
Yes,
licensed
yep.
for force detail. Okay, before we get into your testimony, just for purposes of the record, did I have you look at chapter 102 from the code book of the Borough of Somerville?
Yes, you did.
Is this an excerpt from the that code?
Yes.
I'd like to mark that A9 for the record.
A10.
A10.
A10. Is that the current,
So this is to demonstrate, Mr. Gibbons, that the aerial that you saw is already in evidence, dated 1956, showed a garage and a duplex on the site. I then went back to where I had my office, and as of 1979, there was no POR zone, so that's what it's intended to show. To establish pre-existing status. Okay. All right, you want to start your testimony, please, on variances?
Sure.
Be succinct.
For the board,
Just read.
just passed out some photos, exhibits, maps we produced last year. We see you there.
you prepared these?
You got John McDonough's office.
Okay.
It's for by the drone around.
Collectively, these are A11.
That's where we're at, A11, Council?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just to begin, it's really just for, documenting this, conditions of the site. Page 1 is the property in question, considered the multifamily duplex as it exists. You kind of see the garage in the back. I think this aerial is important to show how tired the structure actually is. We spin the drone around a little bit on page 2, gives you more of a shot of the downtown area here, these redevelopment zones, the drain, and so forth. We have the garden apartment as right there, the brick building sitting next. So out of this photo is the expansive parking lot on the other side of that vinyl fence for some spatial awareness. Again, looking back at the property, you can see how just tired it is from above. Again, the flat roof of the garage. Page 4, it's more of a direct view looking down. We have the driveway aisle, as you can see, going up the right into the back. Basically unimproved parking. We are more recent on the ground, looking directly at the property. It's a pretty good looking building, even though it's pretty old. Again, showing the context here, the 2 doors, the multifamily duplex, split unit, if you will. Page 6 is important, gives us more clarity as far as the plan here is to remove the residential from the first floor, bring it up, and if allowed, to expand the back of the building over really what's already here, not expanding the building footprint, or so desired to accommodate more of that 1,000 square foot redevelopment requirement for apartments to come off a slight overhang of 3 feet, as just previously discussed. But in essence, the building footprint is there, coming off the back makes perfect sense. And then this is the 6 bay garage, as you can see on page 7, as it currently stands and exists. Again, no improved parking, surfacing. And that's pretty much what it is, as we heard tonight. Just jumping right into it, if you will. The site in question is one tax lot, block 131, lot 16. As it sits now, it's a pre-existing non-conforming use. It's a multifamily dwelling in a zone that does not permit multifamily dwelling. For you tonight is an application for a mixed use. We're going to have the office downstairs, bring the residential up, kind of keep that there. I think what's important to note is the garden apartments next door. This is a good opportunity for what we like to call planning step down, or in this particular case, step up to more of an intensive use here. I think what we look at, there's a lot of open space and asphalt parking with the uses next to us, the funeral home and so forth. From that perspective, we do have a situation where upon the FAR, the floor area ratio that we're seeking before you tonight, the site can accommodate this use, as just discussed, for parking arrangements and so forth. We believe we meet actual parking demand with the low intensity office use here. The tandem parking, even though it's frowned upon, it could work. The site will be improved with landscaping and more modern amenities, as we discussed, potential HVAC systems, handicap bathrooms, and so forth, bringing the building into more of building code, the building code, fire codes. When we look at the D1 use here, we believe we meet the 4-prong enhanced burden proof set by the Medici test, which one is site suitability. This current site as it sits now operates as a multifamily duplex. What we're proposing with the addition would still accommodate that. We believe we have the appropriate parking circulations and so forth for a low intensity office use there. When we talk about the positive criteria here, this particular renovation will provide new housing stock, and they're reasonably sized apartments. And it's more in line with today's market, if you will. The two bedroom, just shy of 1,000 square feet, if we will. The project will also promote positive aesthetics with the landscaping, the renovations, the pitch roof of the garage, really bringing this old structure back into its glory days, if you will. And but at the same time, this is a great opportunity for adaptive reuse. The office downstairs, office uses are permitted, so we're actually kind of, even though it's a mixed use, single family structures are permitted, right? So there's residential, we have the residency here. Bringing the office kind of brings us more, I believe, what the zone intended for, which is the office professional use here. As far as looking at the FAR, if this building were converted into a single family building, the bedroom count and so forth, as far as the intensity goes of that, I don't believe we are intensifying this and to a point where it cannot accommodate the residential component here. We just moved it up. I say that because the hours of operation, as discussed with the client, is a Monday through Friday situation, 8 to 5. For the weekends, they're not there while the residents are, and vice versa. The residents go to work, they come to work. So as far as the site being able to accommodate this, the building of this scale and the two uses, I believe it certainly can. When we look at the building setbacks, we have, these are existing conditions, if you will. So we have that C1, that hardship. We're not moving the buildings, as we discussed, building within the building footprint. We talked about the parking relief here, the parking setback of 2.4 versus 5. This is really how they park there now. It's an existing condition. We're going to improve the surface from asphalt, which we believe will add more clarity as far as striping and organization and circulation as well. We have the pre-existing minimum lot area. We are at 9,912 versus the 10,000 allowed. Minimum lot width, 57.12 versus the 60. So we're just efficient on that. The impervious coverage, as discussed, we are actually coming more into compliance with that, even though we are over the impervious coverage. we're at 79.8 versus the zone allows for 50. Again, this property as it stands is already built out. The landscaping, I think, will add value to that, impervious coverage as far as drainage and so forth, and any from the asphalt. We have the side yard discussed. It's 8 and 20, and we have 4.6 and be at 19.6. So these are existing situations here. The pre-existing driveway of the 4 feet versus the 10 feet. The driveway is only really suited here on the right next to the garden apartments. That's not changing. As far as the accessory structures as discussed by the engineer, these are also pre-existing conditions for the side yard and the rear yard. And I concur with the height as well with the garage. 16 feet would be the requirement for the residential use, and 25 feet would be required for the non-residential use from a height measure at the mean. We are below that, and we got just north of 15, about 15.5, as just previously discussed. With that being said, the negative impact here or detriment, I don't believe is adverse or detriment in such a way to prevent this property from becoming a mixed-use office, low intensity here. Again, the building footprint is that size. If this were an entire office complex, the parking situation would still remain the same. If it was a single-family home, it would still remain the same. I think we actually add value here, which is the positive criteria for better circulation. We have aesthetics, we have purpose A, E, G, I, and E. A, to encourage municipal action to provide guidance for appropriate use for development, following the state in a manner which promotes public health, safety, and general welfare. We have purpose E, which is to promote the established appropriate population density. Again, I say that because if this was a single family house, the density here as far as the bedroom count would remain the same. I say purpose I, we have just went over the aesthetic improvements of the property and bringing this whole structure back to its glory days. And purpose E would be to lessen the cost, purpose N would be to encourage coordination of various public and private procedures and shaping land with the view of lessening the cost of such development. Again, this is an infill development. So it really doesn't make sense to build another office space when this could be there and kind of move that up. Again, just to kind of wrap this up, I think this is a positive.
Before you wrap it up, just for the record, what you were referring to is special reasons, and you identify that, and that's contained in the municipal land use law 4055D-2.
Correct.
This is the act.
So just kind of wrap this up, I really do think this is a positive investment to this site. It's been sitting there, as we established, for 100 years. We're bringing this back into its glory days, making it usable as from an office standpoint, and keeping that housing stock, if you will, upstairs and not on the ground floor. And I believe, like we just discussed, the site will flow and function safely and cause minimal detriment.
All right, do you have any opinion as to whether the board chooses to grant this application, whether it would have a substantial detrimental impact on the public good?
I do not.
For the reason you stated?
Correct.
All right.
Or the master plan or the zoning ordinance?
No, I do not. Like I said, the ordinance requires single-family housing, so it allows residential. It also allows for office. We're kind of giving you both. I think it's a good marriage, giving the garden apartments right next door as a step down as far as intensity goes into the zone.
I have no further questions.
Any further testimony, sir?
No further testimony.
Okay.
Well, let's see if the board has any, since again, there's no one here from the public board, questions on the testimony? All right, hearing none.
I have one question. Recyclables and storage. Someone provide testimony that's adequate for is the storage post on the east side for a couple of trash cans? I'm assuming you're doing curbside pickup for everything?
Correct.
So the area is adequate for the office use being is going to be municipal.
Yeah, judging by my office today, it's more than adequate.
Okay.
Will you private pickup? Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Or, I don't even know, is it Somerville? It's not private, is it? Or is it private?
Well, it is private, usually one day a week.
Yeah.
Well, it's curbside pickup for new businesses. Usually a requirement imposed for private pickup, but in your application, you have residence offices. It's kind of ridiculous. You can't really separate that. So I'm just vetting out that
Yeah, I feel like
area you're showing.
two of those normal sized containers, one for recycling, one for garbage, I think would be accurate, maybe one for cardboard. So I got room for 4 or 5 containers there, so. And I put it there simply because I'll be the one taking it in and out. It's easy to roll down the driveway and back.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, sorry.
No, sorry. I guess, turn it over to Councilor.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just by way of a brief summary, this is a good application. It's readapted, you've heard all the testimony. Basically, what we're really doing is shifting 2 residential uses upstairs that have been around for years and years. They predated the ordinance. The second thing we're doing is we're kind of making the property more in conformity with your POR zone by allowing the office use. I think the testimony has been clear and succinct, and we believe we've addressed all of the comments of your professionals, particularly Mr. Cole. This has been vetted by the Historic Advisory Committee, and the applicant and the owner has shown a willingness to agree to most reasonable conditions that we've heard tonight. And I think that this application does indeed merit the board's approval should you review it in that way. As far as the site plan is concerned, we're kind of restricted by the site itself. It's fully developed, you've heard that throughout the night. There's not much opportunity to do anything with the site other than to readapt it, and readapt it in a format that attempts to make it a little bit more conforming. So we would appreciate your kind consideration on this application. Hopefully you're in a position to, in your discretion, approve the application with appropriate conditions. Thank you.
Okay. Let's open it up for discussion. John, got any comments?
Yeah, the parking area, I'm just, it just seems.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
we understood, I understand that we're gonna defer the vote to, the next meeting. Perhaps it might be better if you held the discussion at that time.
Everyone.
And
Years.
given the fact that the other members will have had a chance to review the record and the exhibits, that might be more useful.
I'd rather do it now. Is there a legal problem with that?
There isn't a legal problem with it, but I'm just, as a practical matter, I'm suggesting that it might be better to have the input of as many board members as possible.
Well, we can get that when the board members are here, if the board members are here at the next meeting. And we can, that way we can get, we're here now, let's get the opinions of the board members who are here. And then when the board members who are not here today come, they can offer their suggestions before the vote.
Very well, that's fine, that's fine.
So, John?
Yeah, the parking just seems tight for the use. The stacked parking is less than ideal for an apartment dweller. There's always going to be a rearranging going on of the parking situation. That's going to be a daily thing, and if that's happening while a FedEx truck is there or an Amazon truck is there delivering stuff, or a client is visiting the offices downstairs, it just seems really tight.
Okay.
I agree. I work in a situation where my office, everyone in the office building is assigned parking. And I can tell you 3 days out of a week, when somebody in my office will come up and say, somebody else is parking in my space. Now you gotta go down, figure out whose it is, move. So I am concerned about the parking. I don't know how you address it. But you know, once people, you know, if somebody goes up at night, they put their jammies on, and now somebody's knocking on their door, you're in my space.
This is just, Mr. Molinas, it's just for board discussion at this point. You know, you presented your case.
I share the concern with the parking, and again, I don't know what you do about it, but, yeah, it's, having had some experience with that, it's not pleasant.
I think that's not gonna be a problem at night, they're not gonna be there.
Well, that's true.
My one issue is, I walk by that house a long time. And this is fine, I'm just saying you're changing your demographics because of the kids' toys, to play in that front porch, you're taking it outside away from the apartment residents. They have no outside now. I was wondering if it was possible, a balcony or something, somewhere for them to go. There's no outside for a cup of coffee. I mean, I used to walk by that house and it's filled with toys, kids' toys. I mean, they're playing on the porch. You're taking that porch away from residents, which is fine if it's a professional situation. But I'm just I'm just talking. That's the only thing that hit me. I was like, where are they gonna go? Even if they just have to like go outside for a second. There's no outside, they're gonna come out into a parking lot.
Yeah.
So I know there's nothing to do. I'm just saying, I'm just talking. This is what struck me, is like, they have nowhere to go. They can't, if they had children, where are they playing? Weekend, sure, they got a whole parking lot. I'm just saying, is there a way that, I don't know if you can, if there was an area, a little patio, a table, something for the residents can go to. I don't know if that's possible. That and the other thing, which you can't fix, and as I see walking by, that driveway's a killer. And it's dark at night, and the way it's configured, and people come from that restaurant out, and I wish there was a way we could, I don't know if there is a way of some kind of system. You know, they throw those round mirrors up, you see, in driveways and stuff. But I don't know how you can fix that. I'm just talking. I don't know what you think about that. You know, people walk there, it's like it's a blind alley, and it has nothing to do with I don't think you could do anything.
Yeah, my concern was not entering but leaving because of the
It's
site
leaving,
plan, which
yes.
the engineer talked about, and his view was it's a low intense use, so, but.
I'm just saying, you know, we always,
I get it.
when something comes before us, we try to fix problems that have always been there if we can. I'm just throwing it out there. That, I just wish there was something to offer the tenants. Not that you have to, obviously. I mean, professional tenants aren't looking for that. You know, maybe it's not child friendly for them. That's fine. But even at that point, even in professional buildings, they have a room to go to, they have a balcony to go to, they have a common space to go to. That's why I was wondering if there was, I don't think there is, but that's what
Well, it might be.
I don't know. That's what I thought about all night. Because I've seen it so many times. I walk by that house and they use the porch and now it's gone. So now those apartments are up here and there's no outside for them at all.
I think definitely is a unique kind of stacked parking here, but I believe with the residents, they'll be able to work that out because I have stacked parking in my driveway to get my toys out. I have to move everybody else's cars out of the way. I have the keys, I move all the cars, I get my stuff out, move all the cars back in. So I think I don't think that's gonna be a problem with the residents. As for his office, I do believe that if it's a small office, the resident's not gonna have that problem because it's hey, you park there, and that's it. And not so much concerned about the parking. The driveway definitely is concerning, but they are only making right turns out there. You can't make a left, so you only have traffic moving in one direction. So it's not a two-way flow there. So I don't think that it is. I don't think that's something they can change. And the intensity of the use that's there now is probably going to be the intensity of the use that's going to be if we approve this. I don't think that's anything that's going to change there. The apartments are tiny, so for the toys and kids, Mr. Jones has his office over there. I don't think he's gonna be wanting renting to a lot of kids. I don't think you wanna get put up out of little feet while you're working all day, do you?
Yeah, I'm just doing a favor for somebody there.
So,
kids.
I mean, the front porch is open. They can walk around,
Yes, you're
sit
not
on the porch, like you're.
No, you're not sealing them off.
No, you can walk.
This is just for the board.
So, Yeah, it's an interesting use. You think about the boards and dealing with the last year, we've been reducing office size like crazy. And, we have somebody come in and put an office in. I think if it wasn't the owner having this office, I don't think I would be in favor of producing more office space in town. But being that it is the owner who's going to be working in there, I do think the resolution should reflect that. It should only be a single use going forward. And if they do want to make it more intense, they need to come back to us to review the property. So I think I'm leaning toward in favor of saying yes, but it has to be that single use office, owner occupied, because that also gives the property going to be under more control that way. So that's somebody else renting it.
All right, I'll go last. I think this is a case where we're trying to get 10 gallons of something in a 5-gallon bucket. The driveway is a serious problem, not for entrance, but for exiting. And I think it's going to be an increase in usage, so that situation is going to be exacerbated. Stormwater management really wasn't addressed. I think what you're trying to do is spend as little money as you can to improve the property and get as much on this property as you possibly can. No curbing, no stormwater management. Those are issues that aren't going to go away. The loading area in the back is an overuse of the property. That's going to be a cumbersome situation. I heard over and over again from one of the people in giving testimony that even though this is not conforming with the zoning ordinance, it's a manageable situation. We shouldn't have to have a manageable situation. We're trying to get too many parking spots in too small a space. We're stacking parking. It's going to be a merry-go-round back there, trying to get in, trying to get out, trying to park, and trying to manage things. So, let's see, there was a couple other things. Stormwater management, we covered. And I don't know who the Historic Advisory Committee is. I never heard of it before. So I don't know what input they could possibly have. But I just think it's just entirely too much. You're asking for too much. You're disavowing the important requirements of so many of the issues of the zoning ordinance that this is, for me, this is very troubling. So that's what I have to say.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
How many cars parked there now? It's two units, two residential units. How many cars are parking there now?
Right now I have it empty, except for I'm doing a girl a favor, the homeless girl, she's living there. And, the tenants there have been horrible. I thought I was doing an improvement to the town, but
Do you know, well, you bought it in 2009, so had you had tenants in there prior, when you bought it early on?
Yes.
And how many cars were?
Well, it depends on the tenants, anywhere from, it's, what's it existing now? 3 bedrooms. It's a 3 bedrooms each, so 6 bedrooms, so we're losing bedrooms.
Right.
Which, so you can have less. Depends on the tenant, if you have 3 adults in there with their own cars, you could have up to 6 adults up there with 6 cars, and 12 people back there with cars. I really can't answer until I get new tenants. But, it's,
Well, you really wouldn't be able to have 3 cars for one apartment because you don't have any room for it, right?
Supposed to be closed.
yeah, it's 6
Oh,
cars.
I'm sorry.
This is close to the public, I don't want to sound pedantic.
Okay, I just-
If the applicant had other items to put in, he had the opportunity to put the case in and fall. It's my understanding that this to carry a vote. If I may, Mr. Chairman, let me make one suggestion. Mr. Winnis, of course, you've heard some comments in connection with the client's application. You may wish to respond to those and perhaps advise the board accordingly. I'm using an approach I use in some other municipalities before the board would go to a vote.
That's entirely correct. I attempted to do
And I-
that,
and I
honored the chair's position, but there was a private discussion.
Right. Well, I would
But yes,
it would seem to me that would be in order here before you. It's conceivable that the board's concerns cannot be addressed sufficiently. The burden is on you to do that, your client to do that. But it would seem to me that it would be appropriate for you to undertake to heed the board's comments, most especially the acting chairs, which he was very succinct in terms of his concerns, and I believe they're all very material, quite frankly. So with that in mind, the board is not going to take a vote tonight. The vote will be deferred to the next regularly scheduled board meeting. At the very least, I would determine that in the meantime you would perhaps huddle with your professionals and see what can be done.
We did hear the comments of the board, and we certainly appreciate those, and yes, we do want to respond. Now, from a procedural standpoint, if that requires a reopening, a limited reopening, that's what we would look for. If we can do it in the context of this hearing, we certainly would love to be back and present whatever information.
I don't think you can do it in the context of this hearing, no.
Well, then, we do want to reopen. So the application is to reopen for the limited purpose of responding to the comments we heard tonight. I think that's a fair way of proceeding.
And that could be done. I mean, the applicable law would permit that. So, and I don't believe our local rules prohibit it. So, if the board wants to amend, if the applicant wants to amend its application or amend its presentation in light of comments made by the board, I don't think that's unreasonable, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that would be done at the next meeting? Is that
Yes.
what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Well, can you be ready for the next meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
If the application is going to be amended, it can't be at the next meeting.
Well, I'm not sure we're amending the application. We're responding to the comments of the board members.
I understand that, but I'm just clarifying if the comments, if the responses require amending the plan. I'm not saying it does, but if it does,
Well, next.
if it does, those plans have to be in prior to the meeting.
Right, they had to be in 10 days before. We can also suggest that you, of course, we didn't have anybody here tonight, but we may want to renotice. You may want to do a renotice. I know that's belt and suspenders, but I'm thinking of the board's interests as well as your own. You're looking at me askance. I'm not exactly sure why.
Well, typically, if we had a date certain, the notice would be carried. Typically.
We can carry. Well, are you going to be? Can you be ready for the next hearing?
Got to do some plans.
What is it?
Next hearing date is what? The
June 15th.
June 15th.
Yeah, sure.
My client is indicating that we can certainly have plans before the board and its professionals 10 days prior to June 15th. Yes.
All right. Well, the hearing can be continued to June 15th with with the understanding that you're going to be filing new plans 10 days before in accordance with the MOUL. Of course, at that point, and I do strongly recommend that the board members absent do review the transcripts so they can all participate. And we'll be ready and we essentially carry them, we continue the matter to June 15th.
All right, now, if we continue the matter to June 15th, what about the June 15th agenda that's already been set up?
Right, so I have two applications on, this will be the third, so we'll have three.
Do they get called first or do they get called third?
Well, again, it's basically, as I understand it, a limited response where we requested an opportunity, as a matter of fairness, to respond to the comments we heard tonight. It's not a redo of the hearing. My expectation would be a presentation of the revised plans and some commentary.
And comments from the missing members?
Correct.
Right, and that could be done, it could be agendized as you see fit, Madam Chairman. And Madam Chairwoman, I don't anticipate, though, again, with two or three additional members, we may have other comments, but, I would commend to the applicant, I would mention to the applicant, I think what you need to do, and the chairman pointed this out very well, you kind of roam in your testimony. I think you have to hit the problems directly and see if you can handle them or not talk around them. Because I definitely got the impression from listening to the testimony that there was, and I concur with a couple of the other board members in this regard, it wasn't very exact, it wasn't very precise, and I think you need to be a little more precise to meet the concerns that the board has mentioned as well as its professionals.
I think with the specter of getting it done tonight, that might have impacted on perhaps the quality of the presentation. But now that I've heard the comments, hopefully we can address them, and we look forward to the opportunity to do just that.
Okay, just last thing I'll say before we adjourn. 10 gallons, 5 gallons, okay? That's only I only have one vote. That's my opinion. Okay, are we done?
Remember that that's not dispositive on the overall vote.
No, it's my vote.
Right.
It's my opinion. You know what I'm talking about.
All right, I take it that this matter is carried to June 15th?
It will be carried. It will be, I'll announce it now, the matter will be carried to June 15th. There'll be no further notice. The applicant shall submit file plans no later than 10 days before the hearing, or revised plans. And certainly if there's any submissions to go with those plans, they should be submitted at that time as well. And not on the immediate eve of the hearing or something like that. The board has already expended a lot of consideration for this, and I think you know what you have to do.
And I just want to say that the plans come in 10 days prior, the city plans are revised, I'm not saying that happens. I can't guarantee you're gonna have a week's notice of revised report. I'll get you notice, but I'm just.
The earlier you get them in, the better. There's no question about it.
We certainly hear that, and I'm cognizant of that. So
Okay, because having everything come down to the last day is not always the best. But it's necessary sometimes, but.
Okay.
all right, thank you very much. Have a good evening. See you next month.
So, I guess we're gonna try to adjourn, motion to adjourn. I don't know. Hey, Cliff?
Yes, sir.
Counselor, this man?
You need a motion to carry, you need a motion to continue the case to June 15th. And no further notice applicant to submit plans no later than 10 days before the hearing, all submissions. And advisably earlier than that.
All right, so.
Make a motion make a motion with Cliff this.
Second.
Deborah
Yes.
Brett Clark.
Yes.
Brian Dennis.
Yes.
Richard. Ed Allen.
Yes.
John Flores.
Yes.
Okay.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
I'll make a, does someone have,
I'll second that
Does
motion.
everyone think we'll be here next month?
I don't know if I think I might be out of town. Is it possible
Yes,
that I don't be here, Bert?
Yeah, we need the building.
On phone?
Yeah, you can go on.
Private advice day.
So I can't interact. No, you're gonna have to call.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Tell
I
me.
mean,
I'll call him.
But I think the parking.
So Rich will have to, part of the meeting will be able to handle, so.
Okay,
You'll be squirming in the seat.
thank you.
yeah, it's gonna have a
No, I think that's like.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
But it's like.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
We're not. Good job.
All right, good to see you again.
It was,
Oh, tell me that, I've been in my house 20 years, I think I've.
How do you turn this off?
Is there any